Hey guys, this is National Master Kevin Yang here with another video, and today we're going to do something different, right? So, in the first video of this channel, I talked about making a choice in the opening, right? And I feel like I haven't done too much to follow up on that command. So today we're going to look at what is usually best for on the white side, because when you start the game, you're really overwhelmed about what to do, right? You have so many moves. Could be pushing this pawn, all these different combinations. There's so many ways to start a game, right? And now, as a refresher to my previous videos, I said that we must follow our opening principles, right? That's very important. So, the first opening principle, as we remember, is, or it could be reversed, but be able to control the center, right? 1 and 2, control the center. Second developmental principle, develop everything, get the knights out, get the bishops out. And third, get the king safe, castle it or castle it. And if you'd like more information on that, just always refer to my first video for what I explained. So, when you're starting out, I would say there are two openings that come to mind, right? Or, there are a lot more, but I would say there are three kind of setups for me that come to mind. One kind of setup is your first move in white being this knight move. And you're thinking, why this guy? What does it do? First of all, you do control the center, right? You do put some pressure in there. But most importantly, you're developing your first piece, right? So let's say black brings the knight out. And what I suggest here is you play this move, g3. And you're thinking, why this? Okay, so first of all, the bishop comes out, right? And what if he copies you, right? You play this, castle. Now, it might seem like you're not doing much, but you've already castled. You've already developed this whole side, right? Now, all you got to do is get the other side developed, right? So then castles, let's say this happens. And now if you try to do the same thing on the other side, you could, but he might come in and try to attack your rook, right? So always remember, if the knight moves like this, remember to be ready to guard with c3, right? So I wouldn't suggest b3 on this first move. I would suggest the move d4, pressing against the center, and at the same time the knight's facing the center, the bishop may be looking at the center square, right? So you have control here. Let's say he copies you, and then you have a choice. You could play either bishop here, attacking more of the center, or you could play the quiet approach. You'd get this pawn up and copy your setup from the previous, except b3, let's look at this. If it's symmetrical like this, right? Now you want to either bring the knight out this way, or you can assert the knight in the center right now, right? Let's say he brings his knight out. Then what you do is you push this pawn. Because if he takes, you take this bishop, right? There's always opportunity for bishops in the opposite diagonal to face each other. So, interestingly enough, when the bishop comes here, you need to see, okay, now it's not protected, right? So you want to try to go for like a mini attack on this bishop. You bring the knight out, you prepare this push. Let's say he goes to guard this, right? Then you bring the other knight out this way, remembering that one day you'll play this pawn march. So then you play here, and then the middle game is somewhat simple. You eventually either break with this pawn or this pawn, right? And if you break with this pawn, you could choose to get this pawn here, establish this knight in the middle is one opportunity, right? You could get the rook out, you could continue this push, get the queen out this way. That's another way of thinking about it. That is the simple setup, right? So let's say he goes all out for the center, right? d5, getting in here. So what you're going to do is bishop g2. And let's say knight comes here, right? Wants to push it here. Well, now you know to play d4, right? And let's say he counters again at the center. What you do now is you castle. You keep this development on the king side all good, while you keep your pressure in the center, right? And let's say, okay, he really wants the center. Take, this time you take with the queen. You get the queen, you assert these squares, right? Say he plays e6, getting the bishop out. Then you get this pawn up. You attack the center again, right? Plays bishop c5, and now you have a choice. Queen here, 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 here. You have so many choices, right? I would suggest here, but it's not obvious, right? So, yeah. Usually you want to know a general sense of why such pieces are placed where. So I would say if you want to keep it simple, like this move, it might be a little demanding to understand, but c4, pressure in the center, bishop c5, then you can choose wherever. Because let's say if you go back, let's say it gets greedy, then you get this in, intending to take here, right? Or, in fact, if this, and he wants to protect this pawn, right? Then you counter. And then he does have this, though. He wants to protect this. And then, yeah, take. Ooh, this might, I don't know. No, I don't want to recommend this. Okay, let's say queen d1 takes, and instead you play here, right? You get the bishop open, and you attack this pawn. So maybe that's the setup we want. But that's something I'll cover in a separate video, because I feel like it needs more detail into it, right? So how about this? d4, c5. For now, just play c3. He takes, you take, keep the center open, right? You still have castling opportunities. So, yeah, I would say the best move for a beginner is this. But if I were to be really ambitious, I would tell you to play c4. And you're thinking, okay, what does this move do? He takes, right? Then you take. And you know that you'll take this, right? And you know that you're guaranteed to win this pawn back. So this would be ambitious, but let's say he takes here, right? Then you castle. And you're thinking, okay, I've lost a pawn, but what does this give me? Well, as we said in our opening principles, developing is an edge, right? You're going to be able to get this knight to here, you're going to be able to open some lines up, and getting back this pawn will be easier if you develop your pieces. Like, you get the knight out here, attack the pawn, get this knight in here, get the bishop out. So that's the main setup. So that would be my recommendation for knight f3, right? Pushing this pawn, being able to castle really quick, and then I would say d4, right? The d4 line, and then it depends on whether you want to play bishop f4 or you can play it the more conservative way, right? Get the knight in and push this pawn and put that attack on the opposite bishop, right? So, okay. Now that's one setup that comes to mind. Another setup is, it's somewhat similar, but it's pretty conservative as well. So I think you could go with this move. And at first it might be hard to get why this move, right? But as I said, the bishop comes out, the knight comes out, the pawn comes out, right? And the goal is, if he takes the center, bishop b2, knight c6, you're only going to play e3. You're not going to play e4. You're not going to challenge the center too much. But if he tries to take the center, you pin this knight with the king. He has to defend again. And you play knight f3. You put pressure on this again. And let's say he plays e4. But look how deadly this bishop is, right? Takes right away. And if he takes, you could play g takes f3 and just take the rook on the next move, right? If he tries to defend here, take it, because he can't take it because he's pinned to his king, right? So I would say this is an additional setup. So b3, now let's say he plays d5, right? Bishop b2, knight d7. He wants to go for e5 again. I suggest you play knight f3, and then after that, say play c5, then you play e3. It's the same kind of setup. Bishop, knight, pawn, right? And your next moves, get this pawn up, get this pawn up, and let's say knight here. You could play either this pawn or this pawn. Doesn't matter. Both are great. I think we go with this pawn for now. e6. And now, usually you want to develop your bishop to here. But in the case that it's a little bit dangerous, you always have the comfort of developing it to here. Right? So what I'm planning to do with this is, if he develops here, you castle, and you play something like c4. You put pressure in the center, and you have your bishops targeting the king side. Your next plan is to play the knight out, the queen out, the rooks out, wherever they belong, and maybe one day try to execute this pawn break, right? Let's get the queen out, the rook out, the rook out, and this pawn break, the center will be important. So hopefully you learned some basic opening ideas, and consult me if you'd like additional guidance.